They say an optimist is a badly informed pessimist. And when I set up this reptile room, I certainly made some optimistic choices. No, don't get me wrong, I really like the way my space has evolved over the last years, from a room full of tubs for breeding blood pythons to a rack with exoterra setups full of snakes, till the room it is now. Each stage I have learned, and I took what I learned into the next stage. But still I made mistakes, ones that you can learn from and maybe prevent them from happening, and take that in account when you're working on your own reptile space. And of course, I'm already planning some new improvements, including just the looks of the room and a baby turtle system. Now, let us start with something that has the biggest impact on my lack of satisfaction with this room, and that is these racks. And that might be a bit weird to say, because I really like these racks on many fronts. One part is they're absolutely sturdy. These are going nowhere, and I like the way I can build them, but also quickly adjust them if needed. They also look pretty good, and I'm still happy that my friend once suggested it to me. So in the basis, I'm actually quite enthusiastic about these racks, and I think for everybody who's looking for a nice and quick solution to build their own sturdy racks, this setup is a great option. But the problem occurred in the way I've set up these racks. By the way, I'm always curious about the experiences of others, so if by any chance you're watching this video and you're working on your own reptile room, or there maybe are some mistakes you would like to adjust, if you could, please share them, because I think that's cool for the people also commenting on this video, and for me it's just a fun way of exploring together. So if you have something to share, please do, it will be highly appreciated. See, the reason these racks are very sturdy are these posts, but these posts are very wide. This is 56 millimeter, and I also have them in 65 millimeter. So this is quite a lot of space, and that's okay if you have it standing single like this. But as soon as you're gonna put two racks next to each other, that's 11 centimeters space between setups. Of course, that space in between setups can be used to put cables or plugs, or maybe the setup for your misting system. But all this space will also be a perfect way to collect a lot of dust and spiders. There are so many spiders here. And even though these terrariums close in this bubbling frame almost perfectly, there is, I found, dust and spiders collecting underneath here. So I would have to pull out this rack, or this terrarium. So I would have to pull out this terrarium to actually clean it. And yeah, that's just unneeded if I would just have not, given myself some space. When I set up these racks, I thought, once in a while I'll take out my setups and just make sure I clean in between. And that was definitely an optimistic thought, because it's a lot of work. So even if you do all during hibernation, that's not enough. So there's a lot of dust and debris and spiders collecting in between that space, and I thought it would be okay to clean it up. And if I closed it in with my aquariums and these dividers, that it should not be that big of a deal, but it certainly is. And yeah, I like to keep it clean, so that's an issue for me. By the way, I have thought about putting racks on wheels, at least the smaller racks, but I think that even when they're standing still with all the water there, it's just going to be too much, and at a certain point that's going to be the weak point. So I would like the idea to be able to easily take everything from the wall, but I think for my application that's not smart. So I definitely just need to make sure that everything is raised from the floor again. Even though it's like 10-15 centimeters, that's going to be making such a huge difference. which leads to my next mistake building these racks, and that is building all the way from the top to the bottom. See, I'm not a tall person, but even for me it's very hard to observe what's happening in this system. So I would have to squat all the way to the bottom, which is okay, but still I don't really have a good line of sight of what's happening in here. And imagine you have to go in here and clean these setups. Of course you can still build from the bottom, but then make sure that these setups are relatively high and you have a better line of sight into the setup. That will help you greatly with observing your animals and also making sure everything is clean. And imagine an electrical cord falling behind these racks, or even worse, an escape lanthanotus. This happened once. It's a real struggle to actually get it away from behind the setup, especially because this is quite heavy, you know? I want to act strong, but this is way too heavy for me. And another reason for me to make the bottom easily accessible, because now if something escapes, that ain't working. And this is only a short rack. Imagine the whole row in the other room. So, needs to be changed. The other problem is that the airflow behind these racks is very restricted, and low airflow and high humidity with all these setups will cause stagnant air and will cause problems. And here, where the Shinisaurus setups are gone, you can see proof of that. That's the start of mold, and that is not a healthy environment for the animals, but also not for me to be in. And I only have those issues with the racks that are full from the bottom to the top. That's also why I don't have anything, or at least no more boxes standing on top, because that also restricts the airflow there. So when you are building your own reptile room, also take into account your light plan and your airflow or ventilation system, maybe an airco system. I'm actually thinking about getting a form of ventilation above the door also. You can see there also. Just prevent stagnant air, and that will help you, especially in high humidity situations, because I only have this between the enclosed racking systems. I don't have it behind these, I don't have it behind these, because there's a lot more airflow in and around the setups. That's definitely something I'm taking with me in my future improvements. I have thought about using a dehumidifier, but the problems that the humidity might cause, I can confront with plenty of air movement. I just gotta make sure there's no spaces for stagnant airflow or stagnant air, so no airflow. The high humidity though is also a perfect replication of where these animals naturally live, and it really benefits them. So I want to maintain the higher humidity, but prevent that it has such an impact on the air quality. And therefore I did think about maybe getting a better ventilation airco system, but also an air filter like the Dyson system or whatever, something similar, something that filtrates the air even better. I think that will be a great addition, but that's for the long term. But if you're planning your own reptile room, I would definitely look into that. It can greatly impact the quality of the air in the space, better for your animals and also better for you to walk around in here. You might notice that some of the issues I'm having are caused by me wanting to squeeze in that one extra terrarium, the restricted airflow, but also this next problem. And that is that I have turtles and tortoises, and most of them don't really climb. So a lot of these, hey, spiderweb. A lot of these setups are quite low because they don't really need the height. But stacking these low terrariums, especially the one with lesser ventilation, is a great way to quickly increase the heat, especially if they are very close to each other. It also makes reaching cables there are some cables somewhere between here, a whole lot harder. And you can imagine that that heat light straight to the wood, not a ton of ventilation, will cause warmth in this setup. So what happens is, especially if you stack them so close together, not a lot of air movement around the setup, so not a lot of taking away of that heat. So it travels to the setup on top, to the setup on top, and the one above there. Now, that can dry out the substrate of the terrariums above the other one, but it also impacts the temperature. And for some people, this can be used, but for me, keeping animals like the Platysternon, like the Manoria impressa, these like cooler temperatures. I even have to think about where I place these animals in the room during summer. So for me, that's an issue. I don't want that. So if you are going to build these racks, I would suggest that you make sure there's not only space between the animal and the light, but also a bit more space, or at least airflow around your lighting system. That way your lighting system will live a bit longer, but also the buildup of the heat is a whole lot less. So yeah, another tip. What also annoys me is the floor. I will keep this short because everybody could have seen this coming, including me, but I used laminate, and that's actually in a room full of humidity. I was way too optimistic, and also I needed something quick. But anyway, don't use laminate, use PVC, use vinyl, maybe even an epoxy or concrete floor if you have a lot of aquariums. But even if you have an arid system, I would, you know, with the amount of use that's happening over here, you either need a high-grade laminate or something a whole lot sturdier. And the floor is something I hope to replace. Yes, it's been only 2 years, but something I hope to replace this winter. Now the next point is something that I've noticed now I'm away from home more often, you know, doing trips to share some videos for this channel. And that is that when I'm away, other people are house sitting my home and taking care of the animals, at least the basics. But for instance, the cable work, like if you see here, there's no tags. Now I know that these broad ones are for the UV lights, and these are just for the basic, basic lights, the LEDs. But the people who are taking care of my animals have no ID. So I make pictures of everything before I leave, so it's easy for people. But it might be smart to tag these. What I've done here, and this is a cable situation, which is, don't do this. Plan your electrical work. Even if you're, you know, adding stuff, make sure that if you build a reptile room, you plan for additional setups and electrical wires. Even, so that's just a good advice, and this is something needs to be changed. But here, all the heat has a white cable, and I did that on purpose, so that's very easy to recognize them and take them out. So maybe color code or tag everything, or have a Wi-Fi system, even better, so you can control everything from an app when you're not at home. And that makes it a whole lot easier for the people that take care of your animals, but also gives you a bit of rest when you're away from home in a week, and then all of a sudden it's like 30 degrees outside, and you have animals who like their water temperature to be no higher than 20. One of the last things I wanted to share, which is maybe more specific to my room, or at least a room full of aquariums with turtles, or maybe you have a fish room, and that is my filtration overall. I've talked about this a few times, but I wanted to include it. I run all my filtration on air, and that's also the noise you're hearing. And I run a lot of these sponge filters on air because it's simply easier, safer, and it's one less electrical device in a setup with active turtles. Also, sound travels a whole lot further in water, and as soon as these pumps something happens, there's just a lot of noise in the water of my animals. And yeah, that's something I try to avoid, and I really like this system. The problem is I am using these small pumps. There's one over there, there's one over there, there's one on top of there, and I just kept adding them while adding these systems, and that's so much noise. In this room, everything runs on one pump all the way up there, and it's already a whole lot more silent in here, which is great for me and also for me making these videos. The solution to this problem is within these PVC pipes, and that is to have a central air system. Now I have these pipes for 2 years now. I finally got all the goods and decided to do it. So there will be a central air system in a square along the whole room, and that way I have one pump controlling this and maybe also the other room if I can connect them. And then it will be a whole lot more silent, a whole lot more efficient, and also saves me some electrical and having all these standing here, because this also vibrates. Then I have these young or this rack with these animals. I don't want that. I don't want this vibrating to impact the stress levels of my animals. And they seem to be okay, but still, you know, I wonder, and I want to adjust that. So if you're going to do something like this, plan your central air system along the wall. You might notice that a lot of these mistakes are quite easily to adjust, and there is even a whole lot more I'm not showing in this video. But I think it's cool to show everybody that it's not always perfect. There's always something you want to explore. I'm definitely happy with the way everything has evolved until now. But yeah, there's always something you can work on. You just gotta do it. Another small mistake I wanted to share, but still something I think is quite important, is that each year, if I get babies, I am looking for a way to place them. And I try different ways and different methods, but it's just smarter to have a system that just is there, maybe in your quarantine room or in the reptile room itself, because that's where you keep the parents, so same parameters, to have something in case you're getting a new animal or babies. And that's going to be actually my first build you're gonna see. This is a baby turtle rack or a whole back turtle rack I'm working on, so there's always something small that I can house the fish or the turtles that I'm growing out. Making mistakes is not a problem as long as you learn from them. That's also why I make these videos, so we can all learn from the mistakes I've made. You don't have to make them, but also because a lot of you have actually quite valuable comments and give me ideas that I might not have thought about myself, and I really like that. So if you have any ideas, let me know. Anyway, this is the last time you're gonna see this reptile room, at least as it is, because the mistakes I want to fix or adjust. Some are very easy to fix, some will take a bit longer and a whole lot more money. We are gonna start with the baby rack. I wanna make sure that the baby rack is done so I can grow out some of my holdbacks, and also there are some new additions coming, like my platystellum project. I wanna keep growing that, but I wanna prevent the same issues I had before. The next thing is the central air system, and if we're going to do that, we might as well paint a little bit, and if we paint, maybe a new floor and eventually a new rack for my Massacalia, because this is the oldest structure in this room, and although it works great, my Massacalia project is outgrowing this space. So yeah, it will take time. It's not going to be next week, but over the next year I'm preparing for what I call my winter renovation, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So if you want to follow all that, you know what to do. And for everybody that followed until now, thank you so much. I hope you got something out of this video. I'm gonna check out now. See you on the next one.